When I set my eyes on the Super Soco TS Street Hunter, I was very much curious to know how this slightly widened and larger electric bike would compare to smaller alternatives out there on the market. Now it costs £3,800 at least at the time of filming and in the UK, because that includes a government plug-in grant, and there's also a 2-battery variant which adds roughly £500 to your additional bill, which we'll touch upon very shortly. Now you've got a 2-year warranty on the bike itself, while you've got a 3-year warranty on the motor and on the battery.
Now jumping straight in, let's talk about its electric range. Now the manufacturer on its website claims that you'll get roughly 32.3 miles from its 32 amp hour battery, but in our own mixed riding test we actually noted a range of 35 miles, and that is while riding predominantly on level 1 and level 2 modes. Now the reason this is important is because when you're flicking between the modes, you'll actually see your range dynamically adapting. In fact, at 100% battery, the LCD display that's found in front of you while you're riding claims that on level 1 mode you will get a whopping 68 miles, which I think is pretty adventurous to say the least. If you are on level 2 mode, 55 miles, and then on level 3 mode, 31 miles. So it seems to be like the claim for level 3 seems to be a lot more accurate and pretty much on point as to what the manufacturer is claiming and or what we actually attained in our mixed riding tests. Now bearing in mind that I am a 70 kilogram rider and I only had a backpack on, if you're a heavier rider, or if you have a rear rack with a lot of goods in it, or equally if you're going to be predominantly riding on the motorway, you will find that this figure will drop significantly no matter which mode you're in. So just food for thought. Now elsewhere, if you want to bolster the amount of electric range that you can attain, you can also purchase a secondary battery, which comes in at an additional £500, at least according to one retailer. I say that because at the time of filming, looking at Super Soco's website, you can't actually see how much a secondary battery will cost and or where to order it from. Nonetheless, this will supposedly give you roughly 68 miles of range. I was going to say 70 miles, but pretty much close on that. Now, given our own mixed riding test from a singular battery, expect a rough range of around 60 miles on level 1 and level 2 modes. And if you're going to be riding again on the motorway, expect a lower amount of range. Again, we can't attest to these claims, we're just hypothesizing, but it should be pretty much accurate as to what you can attain, and indeed in this respect gives you that extra bit of peace of mind and a lowered amount of range anxiety. So what happens when you run out of charge? Well, here you can plug in the bike directly, whereby it allows you to charge a singular or dual battery, but of course you can charge it externally. Now in this case we've only got the single battery variant, and in our case it took roughly 3.5 hours to go from 0 to 100%. Now here the external charger itself is actually pretty silent, which is actually great because it means that you can charge overnight without disturbing anyone, or of course take it into a workplace. The only consideration, however, is that it does actually get pretty toasty, so you don't want to place it on, let's say, a carpet or anything that might be potentially flammable. Now this is just a little point to make, because in our case of having tested the Sunra Miku Super, which had a pretty large external charger, it means this will be a lot more convenient if you are plugging in the bike externally and indeed not in a garage. Now it is worth considering that if you're going to be regularly taking the battery out of the bike, that it comes in at a whopping 12 kilograms per battery. Of course, if you have the dual battery variant, that's 24 kilograms to carry around. Now Super Soco have done their best in order to optimize the battery compartment, in other words making it as intuitive as possible for you to remove them or of course insert them. There's a little isolator switch that you have to flick on or off depending on what you're doing, and then the little connectors themselves are pretty sturdy and have got a good sort of clicking mechanism. So with all of that in mind, it brings us on to performance, and here you have a rear hub motor which dispatches 2.5 kilowatts of power, which equates to around 3.3 horsepower and gives you 38 newton meters of torque. Now we had it tested from 0 to 20 miles an hour at 4.07 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour at 6.77 seconds, and 0 to 40 miles an hour in 14.85 seconds. Now it really much depends as to which mode that you're running on, and by that I mean if you're on level 1 mode you'll get a theoretical top speed of around 26 miles an hour. If you're running on level 2 mode it's around 36 miles an hour, and if you're on level 3 mode you'll get the top speed of 46 miles an hour. Now we actually noted a top speed of 50 miles an hour while going on the dual carriageway, so just worth food for thought. If you're going to go a little bit downhill then you might be able to attain a slightly better figure. Now, our only complaint, however, is the fact that you do not actually have a reversing mode. So, for example, if you're parking up like I am doing right now, then you've got no means of actually initiating reverse mode, rather than you just have to use the traditional mode of just kind of walking backwards. Something that we would have liked seen integrated by the manufacturer, as some of its rivals actually do offer a reverse mode, allowing you to just go back quite easily, and therefore makes it a little bit easier if you're going to be parking the bike. Now, while its performance won't exactly stand out in comparison to rival electric bikes out there on the market, its handling and also comfort are absolutely stellar. I feel like I can really weave in and out traffic pretty easily, and better still, if I'm going around windy country roads, the bike is really receptive. Now, of course, the bike has got that slightly widened profile and bigger design, and therefore does constitute an aid to this. However, the combination that Super Soco have done over here should be commended. It's a 103 kilogram bike. Then it also has front and rear tires, which are a little bit widened, whereby they sit at 180/17 and 120/70/17 respectively. And then you have also got front and rear suspension, whereby it sits on the front struts and then also just underneath the seat. The combination, as I mentioned, does provide a fantastic riding experience, and arguably one of the best out there on the market. Now, the only thing worth considering, however, is that the bike does wobble a little bit at 45 to 50 miles an hour, specifically when treated with a bit of side winds, similarly to what I've experienced in the past with some other electric bikes, but something I thought to kind of reiterate, at least on the TS Street Hunter, because it's the same sort of behavior, but nonetheless did feel a little bit more steady due to its slightly larger profile. Elsewhere, the front and rear disc brakes have got good stopping power, but I did notice that I did require quite a bit of force on the levers in order for them to be fully initiated. Nonetheless, it means that you can bring the bike to a complete standstill pretty quickly, and furthermore, if you're going to be tethering it in and around, then you can of course rely on those brakes working pretty well and not having any sort of problems.
So moving swiftly on, we get on to its design, and subjectively I think it looks pretty stunning. It's available in a few different finishes: grey, black, blue and white, whereby the latter is pictured, but no matter which colour option you go for, you'll still get this sort of flared design at the front, stylish headlights and tail lights, and also that slightly widened profile. Indeed, over here it sits at 2038mm by 788 by 1085, that is length, width and height. The wheelbase sits at 1325mm, just to give you a little comparison with some other bikes out on the market in case you're wanting to compare and contrast. Now, the bike is rated at 150 kilograms in terms of the weight it can take, and a pillion could be possible. Just bear in mind that the rear segment of the seat is a little bit shortened, but is a lot larger than some smaller electric bikes out there on the market. Now, a rear rack should be plausible in terms of fitting it, although we do not have it on review, as you might notice. And then it is also easy to access the storage compartment, which is found at the front. It is accessed by the key, and effectively by twisting it in a clockwise manner, it pops it open. Now, here it's actually pretty large. You can even fit the charger if you want within this compartment. If, however, you have a singular battery, you can even fit the charger in the bottom area just beside the battery, and then in the storage compartment you can fit, let's say, small size valuables or even a small size bag. It's actually pretty large, at least when it comes to electric bikes, and here in this respect it's slightly widened and larger profile definitely does make it a selling point over smaller alternatives out there on the market. Now, despite its slightly larger size, the kickstand provides excellent stability when parked. Indeed, it can be placed on sloped pavement, which isn't the same that could have been said about the Sunra Miku Super. However, very much like the Sunra, Super Soco have not included a centre stand, which does seem a little bit baffling, specifically here, given that the TS Street Hunter is actually a slightly widened and larger electric bike. One might have expected this to actually come included, but alas, that's not the case. So moving swiftly on, we get on to Practicality, and here the LCD provides all the key information that you need, such as your speed and the battery indicator. Furthermore, the buttons are conveniently laid out, as you might expect on any sort of bike. Now, the complaint, however, is that there's no push to cancel on the indicators, and this could be a cause for concern for those people who have large-sized riding gloves. Furthermore, there is no sort of audible sound on the indicators, at least not when you have your helmet on, and as a result means that you're going to have to constantly remember to have the indicator on its center position after you've used it. I know we've all been there and sometimes we've left it on, so it's just something worth considering and a little complaint that we have. Now, on another note, Super Soco have omitted a USB port from the TS Street Hunter. I know this might be somewhat of a minor point for some, however, other rival manufacturers of the all-electric bike market do provide it and therefore allow you to charge your device while you're out and about, such as, let's say, a smartphone that can be used for navigation purposes. Thankfully, due to its large size storage compartment, you can place a pretty chunky power bank and then have a cable filtered towards the front portion of the storage compartment, because that's where there's a little bit of a gap. Now, elsewhere, you do have app integration, which is pretty comprehensive and also gives you tracking capabilities in the unlikelihood, for example, if your bike were ever stolen, then you can provide that details to the police and then they can actually track it down and hopefully recover your bike in one piece. Now, on the subject of security, the wireless key fob allows you to lock and unlock the bike and also power on and off the bike. It's very much pivotal in order for you to use it. It is a little bit sensitive, however, so sometimes you might accidentally lock the bike when you're not actually intending to do so. Now, in this respect as well, it's worth mentioning that as soon as you lock the bike, it will automatically alarm it, which is great to see. However, in this respect, it is worth considering that if you do want to initiate the steering lock, you'll have to use the physical key. So with all of that in mind, it brings us on to a verdict of the Super Soco TS Street Hunter, and frankly there's a lot going for it. It's pretty stylish, comfortable to ride, and has got good storage capabilities, at least for an electric bike. The problem, however, is its overall asking price and the amount of range that you're getting from it. The single battery variant is a little bit lackluster, while the dual battery variant will offer you better range, but at the expense of paying even more than you already are. So for example, £4,300 up from £3,800. Now, it is worth considering that if you want a small little run around within the city, you might want to look at the likes of the Sunra Miku Super, which just offers a little bit of a better all-round package at a cheaper price point. If, however, you want something with a little bit better handling characteristics and sort of riding characteristics, then you might want to consider the Super Soco. As a result, it gets a performance award. Now, I'll be intrigued to hear which bike you would choose down in the comments section below. And of course, if you've liked this review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which are greatly appreciated and allows us to continue delivering honest reviews like this one. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.